What's up YouTube? Capital G here talking about the Link Vrains Pack 1 and really Link summoning as a whole and how I think Konami is actually fixing the Link summon mechanic right in front of our eyes, and I don't think a lot of people have actually caught on and started to notice that yet. Now, the reason that I'm talking about the Link Vrains Pack 1 is because it basically is a microcosm of what they're actually trying to do, and I don't want people to, misconstrue what I'm saying here. I don't want people to say, Cap G saying Link summoning is 100% balanced now. Okay, Cap, well then explained how I got Gumblar Extra Link turn 1 at locals on Saturday. You a scrub and you'll always be a scrub. You know Link summoning is still broken. Link summoning as it is right now, yes, it is absolutely still ridiculous, and you can do some ridiculous things. Almost all of it has to do with, cards like Firewall Dragon and Summon Sorceress, Topologic, Gumblar Dragon, etc., etc., and that especially goes for, the TCG. But really, when you look at some of the Link monsters that are coming out soon in the OCG, some of the Link monsters moving forward, haven't you noticed that they're starting to get a lot more balanced, that Konami is starting to put a lot more restrictions on them that they didn't do when they first, introduced the mechanic into the game? I think that one of the biggest problems, and obviously Link summoning does have some problems, I think we could always go back to the whole token thing where maybe tokens shouldn't have been allowed to be used for Link summoning, but Konami wanted to make so many fucking Cyberse monsters that printed out tokens. I guess that's the real reason why you could use tokens for Link summoning. But when you look at Link summoning, yeah, early on a lot of the monsters were a little too generic. I still feel like it's ridiculous that Firewall Dragon, which is probably the greatest Link monster of all time, just required 2 monsters. That is absolutely insane to me. But a lot of the monsters did not have restrictions on them, especially the monsters that summon other monsters from the hand, deck, and the graveyard. And if you really notice, a lot of times those are the ones that end up being the most broken. When you look at the Link Vrains Pack 1, the reason that I'm focusing on this pack specifically is because it feels like, to me, one of the most imbalanced sets that like we've ever gotten, especially when it comes to recent memory. When you look at Link Vrains Pack 1, yeah, it was a set that all got us super excited because a lot of the archetypes that we really love that had kind of been power creeped, your Cleaford and Shadows and, all these other archetypes like Burning Abyss, like, oh my god, Burning Abyss is getting a Link monster. What? Noble Knights and Gem Knights, even these really obscure archetypes that really weren't being played, they're getting Link monsters. But when you look closer at the Link Vrains Pack 1, you notice a really big disparity, right? Like, there were cards in there that were just absolute ridiculous god tier, and then everything else was obviously like, there were some cards in there that were absolute dog shit, like trash. Like, if you look at the Gladiator Beast Link monster, or Madoche Sistar, and then you compare them to some of the other cards like Crystron Needle Fiber and maybe Isolde or Electromite, something like what's the last one? Aromatherapy Jasmine. These are all cards that like literally broke the game between the OCG and the TCG. Isolde, I would argue, is probably the second most powerful card in the entire TCG. Aromatherapy Jasmine created the plant FTK, which they had to hit a ton of cards on the OCG ban list. We all know how powerful Electromite is. That's why it's, currently limited in the TCG, etc., etc. It looks like some of the cards they honestly didn't test, and I think that the Link Vrains Pack 1 was really when Konami started waking up and realizing, okay, some of these monsters are way too fucking powerful. We need to start putting heavy restrictions on them, especially as a lot of the cards that I just named, the most broken cards in the Link Vrains Pack 1, these cards were completely generic. There's a reason that we're seeing Isolde be used in like half of the decks in the meta, because it just requires 2 warrior monsters. When you look at, something like Electromites, every Pendulum deck on Earth could obviously abuse that card, and, it was far worse when something like Astrograph was still in the game. Needle Fiber, same thing. It allows you to just do all types of shenanigans in, any deck that runs a tuner, which is like basically every 5D's archetype ever, or every synchro archetype ever. When you look at some of the new Link monsters that Konami is designing, they're not letting these monsters get completely out of control. They're not letting these monsters be all willy-nilly. And even though obviously a lot of these cards, even from the Link Vrains Pack 1, did have like hard once per turns, because Konami obviously learned that from Firewall Dragon. Like, hey, don't make any effects anymore that aren't hard once per turns that let you summon. But they're even going a step further, and I kind of like what they're doing, right? So I've always thought moving forward after the debacle that was the Link Vrains Pack 1, when we get Needle Fiber and Metaphos, Electromite, and all these cards that shatter the meta, that if Konami is going to give us more cards that let you special summon from the hand, the deck, or the graveyard, and these cards are generic, then they need to basically put limitations on what you can do with that monster, because if you look at that, that's kind of what breaks a card like Crystron Needle Fiber, right? You get a monster from your deck, a tuner, and then you don't have any restrictions on what you can do. You can kind of do whatever you want. If it's a monster like Glow Up Bulb, something that has, you know, some type of self-revive, you can use that monster for link summoning and then bring it back from the graveyard, continue on, and that's how, you know, extra links and shit like that ends up happening. When you look at some of the new cards, for instance, look at something like Raid Raptor Wise Tricks that's coming out of the Link Vrains 2. That card is incredibly similar to something like Crystron Needle Fiber. It summons a Winged Beast monster straight from your deck, and even though the restrictions or the summoning conditions are definitely a lot more restrictive because you do have to use Winged Beast monsters and they have to be dark, this is a card that can be used in other archetypes, right? For instance, a lot of Blackwing players will run 2 copies of Wise Tricks, or at the minimum, they'll run 1 copy, but Wise Tricks has a very smart restriction on the card where the monster that you summon cannot be used as link material, and it's like, okay, that at least guarantees that there probably won't be any link shenanigans, any extra link spam with this card. It's a really smart way for Konami to limit this card, but not really restrict the, you know, the monster when you, the monster that you bring out, not completely restrict what you can do. It makes it kind of somewhat immune to like future abuse, because if Konami does decide we want to make a new Vrains archetype that is Winged Beast and it just happens to be dark, they don't have to worry about this card being, you know, oh, I summon this card, I end up getting to an extra link like Needle Fiber. The same thing goes with even some of the TCG design cards, and really the first time that I kind of noticed this was with the Phantom Knights of Rusty Bardique. Now that's a monster that was a TCG exclusive. It was designed by Konami, you know, on the TCG side, and the OCG is getting it in their Link Vrains Pack 2. This is a monster that cannot be used as link material at all. And when I first saw that, I was like, okay, that's pretty interesting. But now in hindsight, when we see the card in action and when you really look at the trend that Konami's doing, it makes a lot of sense. Konami was basically saying, hey, we don't want you motherfuckers being able to turn this into Firewall Dragon. We don't want you being able to turn this into Topologic Gumblar Dragon and rip more cards out of your opponent's hand, because the Phantom Knights of Rusty Bardique has already proven that it's a strong enough card as it is. There are other examples too. It's not even just limited to the Link Vrains Pack 2. You guys remember Platinum Gadget? That's a brand new gadget card that does allow you to special summon from your hand, but if you activate that effector, I believe it's Platinum Gadget, the turn that it's summoned cannot be used as link material. And when you look at, you know, Platinum Gadget, it's just 2 machine monsters. So the way that I think Konami needs to design these cards is either A, they need to make sure that they are 100% restricted to their own archetype if they're trying to boost these old archetypes. You know, I don't think anyone would be mad. Like, take the Fire Fist Link Monster, for example. That's a card that's obviously very strong, and it gives Fire Fist access to a whole lot of plays with like Buffalo and stuff that they didn't have before. Same thing goes with like Fire Fist Dragon. But if they decided to make that monster, instead of its summoning conditions be 2 Beast Warrior, 2 Fire Fist monsters, would anyone really complain? For the most part, the card would play almost identical to what it is right now. I have seen some combos where people are using like, you know, Luna Light cards and stuff like that, which that could have been avoided by just making it, you know, be summoned by 2 Fire Fist monsters. But I feel like if Konami is not going to make these cards specifically restricted to their archetype, then this new trend that they're making where if these monsters summon things, you know, either that monster that they summon can't be used as link material, or the monsters themselves can't be used as link material, I kind of feel like that is a healthy way moving forward, considering we now have so much evidence of how easy it is for these cards to basically spam all over the field. Even if you look at a monster like the Speedroid Link monster, the High Speedroid Gum Gun, that's another card that is incredibly balanced to me. Yes, it doesn't require, you know, Speedroid specifically to make, and it does give, you know, wind attribute archetypes potentially an extra normal summon, but at the same time, when you activate that effect, you're locked completely into synchro summoning for the rest of your turn. When it comes to like your extra deck, you can't pendulum from your extra deck, and you can't go into Exceeds and stuff like that. There can't be any link spamming after that. I feel like this is the healthy way of designing link monsters moving forward. Like, they either need to just make them extremely extremely restrictive to where only the archetypes themselves can use them, or they just need to, you know, make sure that these monsters can't be used for everything. Because I kind of feel like Konami has learned their lesson from Firewall Dragon. They realize their hands are tied with that card, and now their R&D departments are like, look, we don't want a repeat of Link Vrains 1. We don't want to, you know, release a pack where 3 or 4 cards out of the pack are completely defining the metas to the point where we're having to hit these cards on the limited and forbidden list, or we got to hit like 5 cards around them, etc., etc. So let's just make these cards weaker so that we don't have to deal with that down the line. And again, I'm not saying that all Link monsters moving forward either have to be, you know, 100% restricted to an archetype. They can't make any more generic links, or they have to put heavy restrictions. I'm just saying that they really kind of need to do that when it comes to monsters that give you the ability to special other monsters. If Konami wants to make a whole bunch of generic Link monsters that, you know, let you add a card from your graveyard, or, you know, banish a card from your opponent's grave, give you 500 attack, or debuff your opponent's monsters when it comes to like their effects or their attacks or something like that, those monsters are perfectly fine. And they don't really have to nerf those into the ground, because those don't really facilitate extra links and FTKs. But the ones that special summon, yeah, they got to keep an eye on any time they make those type of monsters moving forward. And I think that they're actually starting to notice that. And I don't think that we're going to go back to the days of Firewall Dragon or Needle Fiber where you get a monster, it special summons, and you can just do whatever you want. But that's just my opinion. Anyways, what do you guys think? Leave it in the comment section below. Do you think that I'm crazy? Do you think that they're not actually making an effort to kind of fix Link monsters as a whole? Leave that in the comment section below if you think that. Thank you guys for watching. As always, subscribe if you have not already, and turn on the notification bell for daily videos.